Hey guys, welcome back to Pop Culture with Pat. Today is going to be my WandaVision Episode 3 spoiler breakdown and review.
We got something cooking and it's looking good. We got something cooking and knew we could.
Before we go ahead and jump into the review though, make sure if you guys are new to the channel, go ahead and hit that subscribe button as well as the bell button next to it. If you guys aren't aware, I'm doing reviews of each one of the WandaVision episodes, so make sure you hit that bell button. That's the way you get notified for any of my new videos that I put out, as well as any of my other videos as well. And make sure for this video to hit that like button down below. Really helps out the video and the channel as well, so I appreciate that, guys. But without further ado, let's go ahead and talk WandaVision. So as we saw at the end of episode 2, we are now officially moving into color. We're moving into the 70s. So we see that with the opening of this episode. We even see when the title kind of drops, you see in color at the bottom, which I thought was kind of funny. And this opening is very Brady Bunch inspired. So, each one of the previous 2 episodes have had, their inspirations from, older sitcoms, and this one takes it from the Brady Bunch. So I thought, that was a cute, funny little opening to start things off. After the credits, we see Wanda and Vision. They're inside their home, and they have a doctor over. He's examining Wanda, and he tells her that she's 4 months pregnant, which is pretty wild because, we literally just saw her get pregnant. Well, it just showed up out of nowhere last episode, and she's already 4 months pregnant. So it seems to be moving along, pretty quickly. Doctor, obviously he doesn't think anything's weird because this whole world is, just kind of strange. Everyone except for Wanda and Vision. But Vision, he's freaking out. He's like, this baby's 12 years old. What the hell is going on? But basically, he does his checkup on Wanda, and Vision goes to take him outside. He's walking him outside. And the doctor mentions something that it could be totally nothing. It could just me making connections where there is no connection. But he says that he's going on vacation to Bermuda. And my brain, first thing I thought of was the Bermuda Triangle. People go there, they get lost, they're never heard from again. And so I was like, that's kind of similar to, this little weird reality that Wanda and Vision are in. It kind of seems like these people are trapped in there. So I was like, I wonder if that's just me making a connection, or if that is kind of just some funny reference Easter egg. So take that as what it is. Right after that, though, another weird thing happens. Vision, so he looks over at his neighbor, and he saw him in the beginning. It was the credits, I believe, Herb, and he was trimming the bushes and stuff like that. But when he looks over now, he's like, hey, I think you're going a little far with that trimmer right there, because he has it, and he's cutting through the actual wall, and he's just like, oh yeah, you might be right. Just keeps doing it. I was just like, what the hell? And so, I think that might be a reference to Sword, as we see, or we're starting to see. I think, they're trying to obviously get in, find out what's happening to Wanda. So I think that might be kind of a reference Easter egg to them, trying to break into this reality. So Vision, he ends up going inside, and when he gets back inside, he sees that Wanda is even bigger now. So she's even farther along. So this this baby is coming along pretty quickly. And as we see by the end of the episode, she ends up having the baby. But they go up upstairs, and they're starting to put together the room for the baby. She takes out these butterflies to hang above the crib. And all of a sudden the butterflies come to life, and she's like, oh, I don't think I did that. And so I don't know if that was more of her powers, where she's having this baby and her powers are being a little wonky as we see in the episode. Or I've seen some people make the theory that it could be the baby, that was inside her possibly doing this, because one of her kids is Wiccan, who has the same powers, as her. So we don't really know for sure. I'm probably leaning it was probably just Wanda's powers being a little skitsy or whatever, but we'll never know. We'll find out in the next probably a couple episodes, I'm sure. So at this point, Wanda and Vision, they start discussing what they want to name the baby. And Wanda, she wants to name him Tommy, wants a, just kind of generic, American, name. And then, but Vision wants to name him Billy, which for you guys, if you aren't familiar, Tommy and Billy are her actual twins, from the comics, Speed and Wiccan. So that's a cool little Easter egg. It'll be interesting to see, I'm sure we're actually going to see the kids, like, maybe not like fully grown, but probably like teenagers or something like that. Because, I mean, at the rate that they're going right now, like, she's already going to have this kid in this episode. So we might actually see them in the show, and what they do with them, I think, is going to be interesting, like later on, if they're just going to be in WandaVision, or if it's going to be something that they're going to spill out, into the rest of the MCU. Right at this point too, like Wanda, she starts having, like more like contractions, and then we start seeing things in the house like really starting to go like haywire. They're like freaking out. They're like, oh my God, and they like run around or whatever, and like it finally stops. But then they discover that, not only did it affect just like their house, but it affected like everyone else in the neighborhood as well. So she knocked out the power, as we see Dottie and her husband, and she's like, oh, do these earrings make me look fat? And the lights go out, and he's just like, thank God. That was pretty funny. After, they kind of like get everything like situated with, with the craziness that just happened, Vision, he comes back inside, he finds out that the neighbors, like, they lost power too, and Wanda's like, she asked Vision, she goes, do you think that the neighbors know that it's me causing this because of just the previous episodes where they've almost exposed themselves, showing that they're the Avengers, that they have these powers? And Vision, at that point, he looks and he's like, I do think there's something weird going on. He mentions like Mr. and Mrs. Hart, mentions Herb, the incident with that. And, he's just like, I think there's something like weird going on. There's something wrong here. And at that point, Wanda's looking at him and she's like, oh no, like we can't have this. And we get the rewind time thing. It's a little bit different though, because it's almost like a jump cut. So it's a little bit different, and it's funny because when I was watching it initially, I thought it was like my internet buffering, but it was just her rewinding time. And then we see Vision, he goes back like a few seconds and completely, he's just like, oh yeah, the kid's gonna be great. Like if it's anything like, is like his mother. So he just completely forgets what he just like previously said like 36 seconds ago, which, was pretty crazy. Just that, her showing more of her ability to be like, yep, nope, I don't want that to happen. We're going to go back and try this again. At this point, Wanda, she starts having contractions. And I thought this was pretty funny because it starts raining in the house. And she's like, I think my water broke. And I was like, oh, that, that's pretty clever. And then right after this, we end up getting our another commercial, which we've had at least one like in each episode. This one I thought was like, it kind of ties into just in general what's going on, because it like mentions like escaping to like another world, because like a mom, she has these kids and they're just like causing chaos, and she just trying to like relax and almost like go on like a little like spa day vacation. And it says, oh, escaping to another world, kind of like what Wanda is doing. She's literally escaping to another world, what I think causing like warping like this own like her own like reality with like Vision and stuff like that. And then at the end you see like Hydra like sponsored by it again. I'm curious to see how much Hydra really plays into this whole thing. I kind of hope that they're not like super involved and those are just references, because we've already seen a ton of like Hydra stuff, so I kind of want them to step away from that. But they seem to be, there's definitely several like Easter eggs for them throughout these first couple episodes so far. So at this point, after like the commercial break or whatever, we come back and Vision, he's like, oh, I gotta go get like the doctor, and like the phone's not ringing, so he has to fly or like run over there like super quickly, and he goes to get him. In the meantime, Wanda, she's like by herself, and all of a sudden Geraldine, she comes over, and Wanda's like, she's trying to hide like her pregnancy, which is hilarious because it's like, if this was in like, like a real world like situation, it's like, there is no way you would be able to hide, like with how big she is like in the episode, you'd be able to hide that from like your neighbors. It's like, they would see you and be like, what? Like, what's going on? You were literally just like not pregnant like, yesterday or a couple days ago or whatever. But, she comes inside, starts talking to her. She tells her that, she needs to get some buckets because all the pipes in her house burst. And we'll kind of go back to that in a second. So Wanda and Geraldine, they start like talking like the neighborhood. Geraldine's talking to her about like her like job, like getting like promoted. And all of a sudden, this was like one of the funniest scenes, I think, like in the episode for me. We see the stork that was painted on the wall in the baby's room. All of a sudden it comes to life and it starts like walking out to the living room, and Wanda's like, what the hell is going on? And she tries to get rid of it, she tries to make it disappear, but she can't. And she does it several times, and every time that she does it, this red mist, it comes up. So it's interesting because like everything else, she's able to kind of control, but it seems like she couldn't control this. So it's definitely, I think that, the bird was being controlled or manifested by someone else. My first theory is to think Mephisto is like the bird, like, because a lot of time, like, the devil shows up in, like, animal forms. So that's, like, my first thing, plus, like, the red mist and everything. But it could be maybe being controlled by someone else. But it's definitely, I think that bird is being controlled by someone else in some shape or form because Wanda was not able to get rid of it. So that was something I'm sure we're going to hear or, see more about in, like, future episodes. Finally, like, after the whole, like, bird fiasco, Wanda, she starts going into labor and Geraldine's like, oh my God, like, you're pregnant. And so she helps her deliver, like, the first baby. And, finally, like, Vision and the doctor, like, show up. The first baby is Tommy, and as Geraldine takes the doctor into the other room, Vision, he's like, oh, like, looking at, like, his first kid, and then Wanda starts going into labor again, has her other kid, Billy. So we have the two twins right there, Wiccan and Speed. So, like I said, it's going to be really interesting to see what they do with these characters going on in the future. But we have the twins right there. It's at this point in the episode that shit really starts to hit the fan, or we can see, like, the beginnings of it. And I think a lot of people were waiting for this. I know some people were like, oh, the first two episodes are boring, the sitcom thing and stuff like that. But here's where we're really starting to see, some things, like, take shape. So, as Vision, he's walking the doctor outside again, he's going to go, say goodbye to him. And, as they're, like, talking or whatever, he's like, oh, Vision says, like, I hope you can still make your trip. And the doctor, he says, like, oh, small towns, they're so hard to escape from, something like along those lines. And the way he looks at Vision, like, almost like he realizes, like, he can't leave, that he's, like, trapped, which is really weird. And then Vision, he turns around and he sees his neighbor Herb again, and but Agnes is over there as well. And, they're trying to, like, it looks like fix, like, the crack in, like, the wall that he made with, like, the hedge trimmer. And he goes over there and starts talking to them, and then, like, it starts cutting back in between, like, Herb, and then goes back to Geraldine and Wanda inside. So on the one side, we have Vision, talking to, like, the two neighbors, and he's like, oh, did you guys lose power too? And Agnes makes a comment, and she's like, oh, like, Ralph, he looks better in the dark anyways. We still haven't seen, her husband, this Ralph character, which I really think my theory is that that's going to be Mephisto, to some, like, shape, degree, or whatever. And just like the reference where he looks better in the dark, the devil, like, looks better in the dark. We've just been getting a lot of, like, devil references and stuff from her. So I really think we're going to see him at some point, like, even if it's, like, the very end of, like, this series, that we're going to see him show up, because we still yet to see this Ralph character. So that's my theory on that. We also, like, I'm going to kind of just focus on them for a second, and then I'll go back to, what's going on, like, in the house. But Agnes, she asks, like, Vision, she's like, oh, like, is Geraldine inside the house with Wanda? And he's like, yeah, why? And he kind of, looks at her weird. And Agnes just goes like, oh, like, she's new to town. She doesn't have a husband, no home or anything like that. And Herb's, kind of, like, agreeing with her. And Vision's like, oh, well, I mean, that's, that's, like, fine. That's, normal. But the interesting thing there is that, she says she doesn't have a home. But earlier on, when Geraldine, walked in, she's like, oh, all the pipes in my house burst. So that, that was, like, interesting there. See if we learn a little bit more about, like, that. See if she actually does have a home. I know that, from what we've kind of seen so far, I definitely think that Geraldine got, somehow she probably took that helicopter, got sucked into this universe. So I don't know if she actually does have a home in this universe or not. But, we'll see how that plays out. And then Herb, he starts talking, and he says, she came here because we're all, and then he kind of stops there, and Agnes, she looks at him, and she's like, like, looks like she's, like, actually, like, afraid. So I'm wondering if Agnes is kind of, she, everyone kind of thinks she's Agnes, like, Harkness from, like, the comics, where she's, like, a witch. So I wonder if, like, she obviously knows, like, kind of, like, what's going on to some degree, but I wonder if she's almost having to do certain things against her own will. Like, I wonder if, like, Mephisto or something is kind of making her do, certain things, or if she's just, like, afraid of Wanda. So a couple different, like, theories going on there. I'm definitely curious, to hear what you guys think as far as, like, that whole situation with her goes. But then, like, right after that, she's like, oh, well, I gotta go. And then Herbie's like, oh, I gotta go back inside. I'll catch you on the flip side, Vision. And then that kind of, that stops there. Meanwhile, on the other side of things, so inside the house, we have Geraldine and Wanda. And she's, she has like the two kids. She starts singing a lullaby, Sokovian lullaby to them. And she like mentions, she's like, oh, like I'm a twin too. And she mentions, her brother, like Petro. And then all of a sudden you see Geraldine, and like the look in her face, she's just like, almost like she's like kind of snapping out of this like spell. And she was like, he was killed by Ultron, wasn't he? And Wanda's just like, she's crying or whatever, and she looks over at her and she's like, what did you just say? And then like Geraldine, like, I don't know if she like kind of realized that she made a mistake, and she's like, oh shit. And she's like, oh, like you're such a strong woman. And she's like, no, what did you just say? And I was just like, oh my God, I knew that they weren't going to kill off like the Monica Rambeau like character, but I was like, if I didn't, like if she was someone else like randomly, I was like, Wanda's literally going to kill this woman right now, just the way that she was looking at her. And it actually like gave me goosebumps just like watching that, those final moments. And then Wanda, she points out to Geraldine, she looks at Geraldine and she sees like her necklace, and it has the sword symbol on there, if you guys like, weren't aware of that, but it has the sword symbol. And Wanda's like, what is that symbol there? And then finally she's like, who are you? And Geraldine's like, I don't know. And then basically she's like, you're going to have to leave. And she's like, oh, Wanda, don't be like that. And then it kind of cuts to afterwards. We see Vision, he comes in from outside, and he's like, oh, like, where'll Geraldine go? And Wanda, she looks up, and like the look on her face, like looked like, really like sinister. And she's just like, oh, she had to rush home. She's gone now. And then we see Geraldine get ejected from this world out into the real world. And then we see, Sword, what I'm pretty sure is Sword, surrounding Monica Rambeau and, going to like pick her up, make sure she's okay. The interesting thing about the end of, that whole ending right there is that when she gets ejected out of that world, she still has all of her clothes and stuff from that 70s period. So my thing that I have a question on is, does that mean if any other characters or whatever were to get like ejected, thrown out of that, Wanda's like world and into like, the real like world, would they basically stay like the same? So my thing's like, if like Wiccan and Speed, like if they came out, would they like be able to like stay in the real world? Would Vision be able to? I know he doesn't have like the Mind Stone or whatever, so I think like he probably wouldn't be able to, but I don't know, maybe that's a way that they could bring him back. But I definitely think there's a good possibility that maybe Wiccan and Speed could come out, into the real world that way, and eventually maybe do something as far as like the Young Avengers and stuff like that goes. So yeah, by the end of this episode, we're definitely starting to see a lot more, more clues and stuff, starting to come together. It'll be interesting next week. I wonder if we're going to kind of see more of the perspective of what's going on from the outside world rather than like the sitcom, just where we, it saw at the end of the episode, the screen, it opened up to like the, the widescreen instead of the aspect ratio that we've been doing for the first like couple episodes. So it'd be really curious to see, but I think at this point it's starting to pick up. Some people were complaining, like I said, the first two episodes are boring. I didn't think that was the case. I've loved Wandavision so far. I love the little Easter eggs and hints and stuff throughout, and I just think that it really makes that, it fun, like picking out those little things in these episodes, and now we're really starting to get a payoff as far as like kind of what might be going on. So let me know, what you guys think of WandaVision Episode 3. Let me know down below in the comments, and I want to hear all your guys' theories, thoughts. If there was any other Easter eggs that I missed, definitely let me know down below in the comments. As I said, if you guys are new to the channel, please make sure to hit that subscribe button as well as the bell button next to it, just so that way you do get notifications for any of my future, videos for WandaVision. I do them every single week, so make sure you check that out. And also hit the thumbs up button at the bottom of the video. Supports the video, supports me. It makes it really hard with like the YouTube algorithm, especially where I'm a smaller channel. So any of that stuff, guys, really helps. And as always, guys, please make sure to check back for more Pop Culture with Pat.